Hey everyone, thanks for joining Kansas City Jug tonight. It should be a great meeting. We are here with Mike Redlich from the Garden State Java Users Group, the New Jersey Java Users Group, and he's going to be presenting on getting started with Jakarta NoSQL and MongoDB. So we're going to go and get started with our typical Java news here, just to kind of give a little roundup of what's going on. But first, we want to thank all of our sponsors. Garden State Jug is going to be presenting sponsoring Michael. And then we also want to thank the Clinical Reference Laboratory. They're going to be covering our meetup fees. And then also YRC, hopefully at some point we'll be able to get back to a meeting in person here. But all the same, still thanking YRC for when they were hosting us in person during that time. So our Java news for this month, I just kind of want to go over some of the new JEPs, that's a Java enhancement proposals that have been targeted for JDK 17. They aren't officially part of it yet, but they've been targeted for it. But there's JEP 403, which is going to strongly encapsulate the JDK internals, 406, which is pattern match for our pattern matching for Switch. And then there's also remove the remote memory interface, and then the foreign function and memory API. Two of these I really want to touch on, though. The first is about strongly encapsulating JDK internals, because this is probably going to be something that's going to have a lot of Java developers a bit nervous. So right now in JDK 16 and all the way back to 9 and before right now in JDK 16, the default mode, I believe, is illegal access is denied. That's the default mode. But you can change it to either illegal access warn or debug, which will then just give a warning if something is trying to use access into a module that it's not supposed to have access to. But now with JDK 17, these two will now be no-op, and now the default mode and the only mode is going to be a deny. So what this means is that you can still add opens to any sort of library or something that kind of needs to do reflective access into some sort of module that it needs access to, which could still be a good amount of libraries, like maybe some like older Spring libraries or Jackson or Hibernate and stuff like that. So you can still get those to work. It's not like you can't get them to work, but it's just going to take a little bit more work. And that's just kind of a way for the Spring team, or not the Spring team, for the Java platform team to let people know kind of what sort of libraries are kind of having some of these issues, just so you can upgrade to the more recent versions of them that maybe have their access and everything all set up properly. So next, oops, I guess I forgot. Oh, sorry, oops, let me go back. And then also the other JEP I wanted to target on is the pattern matching for Switch. This is a preview mode, so in order to actually use this, you'll need to set up the preview flags to actually use it. And also, if anyone could just put a comment into the live stream just to make sure I know everything's working. But hopefully we're actually live streaming. But all the same, but the pattern matching for Switch is something I'm really excited about. And we can see a couple of the examples. So what you can do is do a switch on a type, which could be very useful if you're kind of working with a lot of non-structured data where you have many different models. But we can see here, you can have a case for an integer type, a long type, double, and so on, or any type you want. And you can have then different behaviors being executed based upon that. Also, what you have is the guarded pattern, which pretty much lets you to add extra clauses into a case. So you can see here for a case of string, and when that length of that string is 1, or it could be whatever kind of other logic you want, then to only execute it for then in that case. So that could be kind of helpful for whenever you've had those instances where you've had oh, here's a case, but then you have an immediate if statement under it to do something else. You can kind of get rid of that and actually properly put that all up in the case. So I'm really looking forward to this. It's probably going to go through 2 rounds of preview. So it's Java 17 and then Java 18. It'll both be in preview, but then hopefully then in Java 19, it should become, it should leave preview feature status and become a normal production feature. Some other news. So some conferences coming up. We have JFrog, their Swamp Up conference. So we have for the Americas, it's going to be coming up next week from May 25th through 27th. Then there's also for Europe and Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, Asia and Pacific. They have June 2nd and 3rd, and you can check out more of it at that link. DockerCon is also coming up next week. And then finally, KCDC is coming back this year, and it's going to be in person. So actually, that's really awesome. It's going to be one of the early conferences that hopefully are going to be going in person. The CFP is open, so if you're interested in presenting at a local conference, it's actually really great if you're going to be here local, just in case there could be some issues when it comes to companies allowing travel or not. So if you're here local, you may have a better chance of being accepted. But definitely submit for it, and then also consider registering to go to it. It'd be kind of nice to actually talk in person again instead of doing either YouTube or Zoom and all that. I know I'm kind of done with, I've reached my Zoom fatigue. Unfortunately, I don't have any upcoming meetups to mention right now, but if you have something to mention, put it in the live stream or put it in the comments, and I'll be happy to mention. You can probably mention it here at the end. And also, if there's anything else you want me to mention, also, again, put it into the comments, and I'll let you know. All right, with that. Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
Good, Billy. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
All right, so that is enough of me talking. I am going to hand the speaking stick over to Mike for his presentation. So, Mike, if you want to put up your presentation here.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Oops. Okay, there we go. All right.
Cool. All right, and I'll hand it off to you, Mike.
Okay, great. This thing, there we go. All right, awesome. Well, good evening, everybody, and greetings from Flemington, New Jersey. It's what makes the Garden State the Garden State. We're on the western part of New Jersey, about maybe 20 miles from the Delaware River. So, yeah, it's like to share with you something, a lot of what I've learned about Jakarta NoSQL and MongoDB tonight. But just in case you don't know who I am, this is my background. The Petrochemical Research Organization translates to ExxonMobil Research and Engineering in Clinton, New Jersey, and I've been with the company about 31 and a half years now. And but what I do in my spare time, for the Java community is, as you can see, I write for InfoQ for the last 5 years. The Garden State Java User Group is now in its 21st year. It started out as the ACGNJ Java User Group, which wasn't as well known, but before we rebranded, we did have some well-known speakers, here and there. So, but we decided to go nonprofit on our own, and it's been working out real well as of October last year. I'm also a member of the Jakarta EE ambassadors. Reza Rahman, as you may know, started that organization when it was the Java EE Guardians. So he asked me to be on the leadership council. So we meet periodically to go over how we can be ambassadors for Jakarta EE. So all this stuff keeps me very, very busy. My Twitter handle is on the bottom left, as you can see. And the share MP knowledge was left over from my MicroProfile talk. So, but it's cool to have it there anyway. So that's about me. So I've thought about this. I said, well, what's the distance between Overland Park and Madison, New Jersey, where we had our in-person meetings? And it turns out it's about 1,200 miles. So it's kind of pretty close laterally. So, but it would be nice to be there in person, but of course, because of COVID, we have to do this virtually. And I hear what you're saying, Billy, about Zoom saturation. And also, too, while I'm thinking about it, you mentioned the pattern matching for the switch statement. I interviewed Brian Getz about 4 years ago on this when it was, pattern matching was early on. So it was kind of a cool interview with him. I looked at what he had written on one of his papers and did a lot of Q&A on that. So that's a fun news piece to read. If anybody's interested, just let me know. I can shoot you the URL for it. All right, so the objectives I have for tonight, we're going to be around for the next 3 hours. Only kidding. We talk about what Jakarta NoSQL is, and here's where I would say, well, who has heard of Jakarta NoSQL? Who's heard of Jakarta EE? But we can't do that. And related to that is Eclipse JNoSQL. We'll look at the database types that is supported by the specification itself, the various layers. And we'll finally get to a demo, which I'm sure everybody likes to see, and then some Jakarta NoSQL resources. All right, so what you can expect to see tonight here is, basically it's only going to scratch the surface on using this specification. There's a lot to it. It can be very deep. There's more than one way to skin a cat. There's a set of factories you can use to implement a database, for example, or inject a database. So it's just a lot, and I just want to show you basically using one of the databases that's supported, and that's MongoDB. I've been using MongoDB, I guess, for the past 8 years, I'd say. But there are 4 different types of NoSQL databases, some of which I've never heard before. But learning this specification, I got exposed to those kinds of database types. So there's a lot there. So hopefully down the road, I'd like to do some more in-depth type of presentations. So this is a good starting point. All right, so Jakarta NoSQL. All right, this is one of the Jakarta EE specifications. It's the status of it right now is it is in development. Otavio Santana is the specification lead, and basically it streamlines the integration of Java apps with NoSQL databases, and it's a set of APIs to provide a standard implementation. And succinctly, basically, Jakarta NoSQL is one API, many databases. I think that's been phrased, that was coined by Otavio. And we adopted this specification a few months ago. And I don't know if you're aware, but Java user groups are encouraged to adopt one of the specifications. And it's somewhere on the Jakarta EE page. I should have gotten a link for it. So since I've been into MongoDB, for a long time, I thought, hey, what the heck? Why don't we adopt it and contribute and those kinds of things? So we look forward to doing, to helping out with contributions for the specification itself. I don't know what the timing exactly is just yet, but it would be really cool if this was formally released for Jakarta EE 10, which I believe is the first quarter of next year, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong on that. 9.1 is coming out next week, so that'll be your first incremental release ever since Jakarta was born. All right, so Eclipse JNoSQL is the compatible implementation of the Jakarta NoSQL specification. So, as you may know, for a lot of the specs, there is either a reference implementation, or these days now they're called compatible implementations. I believe Weld is one of them for CDI, for example. So it's a similar thing here. There is one defined API for each of the NoSQL database types, and we'll talk about those. And it's also, if you're familiar with JPA, you might notice that some of the annotations are the same, as far as entities and column names and primary keys and so on. So the different types here is column family is one of them here. Some examples are HBase, Cassandra, Scala and Cloud Data and SimpleDB, and have a, let's see. Well, I have some graphs on these. There's Document that I think most people are familiar with, and that of course is MongoDB and CouchDB, I believe. There's the graph type, which is kind of interesting, and then there's the key value. So the column family, it's kind of hard to see on above there that says row key on top and then columns right above where it says Apollo and Duty and Sun. So that's the structure of it. And yeah, to be honest, I've never worked with one of these, so I really can't say too much about it, but that's basically how you would map out things for a column family. And as I learned with MongoDB, the way you reference things relative to a relational database is different. All right, so in a column family, a table is referred to as a column family, and as you can see there, everything else. So the relational you'll see in the other database types, it's table, row, column, and the relationship itself. So that's what it looks like for a column family. Okay, so document. Everybody, of course, knows that MongoDB uses their binary JSON. So here's an example of a JSON file. Okay, and with this chart here, it's a table is known as a collection, and the row is a document itself, like you saw on the slide previously, and the key value pair is a column itself. And the link, I believe, as far as relationships, is there is a way you can do a, what would be referred to as an inner join in a NoSQL database, at least in MongoDB, and it's a little involved, and if anybody's ever done that before, but what you wind up getting is basically an embedded document from another table that you want to import, for example. So then there's the graph database. It uses, just like graph theory that you may have learned in your computer science classes. For me, that was only a few short years ago. But yeah, it uses graph structures and semantic queries with nodes, edges, and those kinds of properties. It's hard to see, but there's all these relationships here that Apollo knows have faced this, and and so on. I stole these or borrowed these from the documentation, so if you wanted to get a better look at these, you can always reference that. I apologize for the graphics. It's one of the things that's hard to do sometimes in Keynote. And based on graph theory, you have vertices and edges, and the way you reference things is listed as you see on the right-hand side. And there's a key value, all right? So, Apollo is mapped to Sun, and, Aries to War, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one of the more simple ones. And a table is referred to as a bucket, and then the row is a key value pair itself. Oops, I think I hit that too far. All right. So different layers here. You have the communication layer, and that was formerly known as Diana, and one of the goddesses of hunting, and then the other one was known as Artemis. That's the mapping layer, and we'll talk about all those. Any questions, Billy, at all, or?
I'm trying not quite any questions yet, and I don't know if you're maybe going to go into it here in the next part, but is there any general guidelines around primary use cases for each of these, just so people maybe know when should you use a key value versus a graph versus a document?
Oh, that's a good question. And well, I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I'll write that down, and then maybe I can talk to Ottavio about that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Otavio said he might join tonight, but he's out in Portugal, so it's very late out
Okay.
there for him.
Oh
So
yeah, that
I'll-
is pretty late.
yeah. Well, it was kind of a funny story. And he presented back in January to our Java group. I guess I made the arrangements late last year, and it was he was living in Brazil at the time.
Okay.
So time zone wise, it was only like an hour, right? But then in the meantime, he had moved to Portugal, and when I realized that, I actually sent him an email, and he still basically kept or accommodated our 6:30 p.m. start time. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So use cases with each type. That's that awesome question.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that. That's
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So here's a cartoon, basically of how it all is mapped out. You have the two layers, mapping and communication, and you can just barely make out, Artemis, with Duke with the arrow there, and then the data tier with the four different data types itself. All right, the communication layer itself, it basically does what it says it does about defining communications with the databases. There are modules representing the 4 NoSQL types, but there is one of them, the graph. There, instead of reinventing the wheel, what was implemented was Apache Tinkerpop. What was it called? I have not, used that, but basically that is the supplied API for a graph database type. And you may want to think of this in the relational database world as the JDBC APIs. And then the mapping layer, all right, obviously does the ORM as we know it with Hibernate and such, does the mapping to Java objects from NoSQL databases. It incorporates a lot with Jakarta CDI and Jakarta Bean validation specs. It's annotation driven, and as I mentioned earlier about ORM and JPA in the database relational database world. All right, so there's scalability versus complexity, and if you can probably see the X and Y axes, it's scalability as a function of complexity. So as you can imagine, the graph database type is very, very complex, but it's not very scalable. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, the key value is very, not very complex at all. So it's more, you can scale it easily. And this might be part of your answer, Billy, for use cases.
Yeah, that kind of gets into it. Scalability versus complexity, and yeah.
So, but I think I'd like to get a better answer too. But I think that would be a good starting point here.
Yeah, because I imagine there's still probably even a bit more into it than than just this simple graph. But yeah, nice.
So a document obviously is it's kind of surprised actually seeing that where it is, a little bit out. It's for the document because you're using JSON and that should be easily parsed, right? It's, but that's where it is though. All right, and then these are the supported NoSQL databases, most of which I have not heard of. Well, here's Tinkerpop right here, and you got Cassandra, and the ones that we all know. Solar, special note about that. I think Spring Data is dropping Solar, Apache Solar, for whatever reason, with their next release train. I think it's 2021, and but half of these I've not heard of. But anyway, but that's where they are. So
actually, maybe one thing, just a little back to what you were kind of just mentioning about with like a document, most of that time being in JSON. That graph, is that just like a generic graph for like any programming language, or is that actually specific to Java? Or do you?
Probably, well, yeah, probably Java, because I don't think there's any. There's no other programming language that's being being used for the,
Yeah.
well, that's like, I can't say for sure, but,
Yeah.
Spring Data for MongoDB is Java, right? That kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just kind of wondering, because at least kind of to your point, I'm wondering with like records now being added to Java, if that will kind of change it, because I believe, or records, if you're using that and you're doing serialization with them, it works faster, or should work faster once a library is updated to do it, because it's not doing a bunch of reflections. So that would be interesting then. That could be a really good example if like you're heavily dependent upon that you could see probably a noticeable performance difference.
Yeah, and that would be a nice experiment too, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
to, because with the example I have, obviously there are Hojos, and with the usual getters, setters, and the whole 9 yards, and of course Redlich takes that away. But then again, companies or organizations that that haven't gone to JDK 16 yet, right?
Yeah.
You kind of stuck. So there's a backwards compatibility issue there. So so maybe down the road, as more and more people adopt JDK, well, I guess 17 is supposed to be long-term support. Obviously, Redlich will be part of that. So it would be interesting to see if that is adopted a lot more.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Cool.
Yeah. All right, so we're at the live demo already. Wow. I do have some other slides at the end, but that went a little bit faster than I thought. But so I thought I'd have some fun with the application itself. I'm a huge craft beer enthusiast. So, whenever, we go to new places, I always like to have what's there for the, what's offered locally, so that's always my goal, So anyway, I have a beer app here, and, if I was smart, I would have drawn out some kind of class pattern or class, design, but I wasn't that smart. But basically, we're going to model, the beer itself and and the brewers. Okay, not the Milwaukee Brewers, but sorry, I drive my wife crazy with the corny jokes. So, so yeah, here, this is where. Now, interestingly, Billy, where would you do? I guess you can still do that. Yeah, because so you have your oops, sorry. Yeah, you have your fields, right? And these correspond to the to the database itself. And let me actually show that. That might be a good place to start. Yeah, so I have MongoDB running, and I have beers database, right? And I have a beers collection, or just beer collection. Sorry. All right, so I have a couple in here already, some of my favorites. That's a very short list, though. And then a list of brewers, too. All right. And, basically just, the name of the brewer and the city and state, just very simple, right? But, the ID corresponds to the the brewer ID in the beer collection right there. And while I'm thinking about it, for those who are familiar with MongoDB, there's the object ID, and it has a hexadecimal value if you don't supply one like that. When I was working with this, it was interesting. You can, if it'll read the object ID, and it'll display it as just a text on the screen, like when you write it out, as opposed to here's the publications DB. Oops, I had that too, like that. Sorry. Let's see the polymers here. Okay, so yes, so here in this particular database, right, you have object ID and this hexadecimal value, which corresponds to the, I think, the machine ID, date and time, and a couple other values right there. So it's generated that way. But it was interesting when you try to enter a new one, or basically what I tried to do was to add the brewer ID. So you create a brewer, or have a brewer, and you want to add a new beer, and you put in the new beer with the the name, the ABV, and the beer type. But the brewer ID, when you go to put this in there, it'll show up differently, and it's not a bad thing. It doesn't blow up, but just trying to be consistent. So it's something I want to work on too. So I decided to go back and just keep things simple, with the primary key being just integers. So I wanted to mention that. Also, too, one thing I learned kind of the hard way, but it's not the end of the world. In this publications database, you notice that it is a lowercase p, and your objects or your entities in your Java code correspond. They're case sensitive, and I have a repo for that up on my GitHub. And of course, going by normal Java convention, publications is uppercase P. When I finally got around to entering one, well, that's what I got. So it wrote out a new collection with a capital P. So what does that mean? Now, well, do I have to go back? Well, do I have to deal with the with the mixed case, camel case, or do I make my class name with a lowercase p? But that's not, as it were, the Java way, right? So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to keep in mind when you design, design your application. So okay, as you can see here, here's the beers, right? The type, etc. And then the different brewers, some of them are in New Jersey here, but I did look up some from Kansas City. So, all right, so here are your annotations to declare an entity, the primary key, and the column. And here's something I just learned today, and this is very important. In the column annotation, you don't have to provide a field name, but I believe it's like a standard or convention to use brewer _ID, but sometimes you want to use this, and that's what I was doing. The variable name was brewer _ID, but when I went to do a query, I wanted to get if there's more than one beer for a particular brewer, I wanted to put out that list. I was getting an empty set. So that's something to keep in mind too. So because it's the typical repository annotation, and it's the find by, delete by, etc. That you can define. So if you do this, you can maintain your brewer ID in the database itself, but here, otherwise, the defaults to the name, the ID, these all correspond to the values in here. In this case, it's the beer, right? So they all match right there. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind as well. And this is your standard POJO, default constructor, all that, right? And all the getters and setters, right? And the toString, the whole thing. And thanks to Otavio, you can define these builders right here. So that's there. I'm not going to go through it, but that's something you can do as well. And I'll show you how you can actually add a new beer to your database. The brewer POJO, obviously very, very much the same thing. Okay. What did I, and then there's the, there's the builder stuff itself. The beer type is an enum. And, oh, wait, that's, oh, there it is, beer type. Yeah, that's an enum. So you can see all the ones I've defined here. So, all right. All right, and then so there's a couple of ways you can do this, and I have an examples of how you can actually you can get data from there. You can query, you can insert. I didn't do any deletes, but it should be pretty easy to do. And I have a repository for this if you want to play with this after the fact. So we'll start with a beer repository. All right, and basically it's an interface that extends the Jakarta NoSQL mapping repository, and basically it's got the two templates or generics, beer and string. My C++ came out there after a while. Sorry, And then, you can just basically, you do your, you declare your find bys. In this case, here's the brewer ID, right? The one I just mentioned before. And you'll notice here that IntelliJ is telling me that the managed bean must be a concrete class or a decorator annotation. And basically what that, what it comes down to right now is just that because the implementation happens in the background by CDI, you don't have to create a concrete class. So this is basically an IntelliJ-ism, as it were, right? And I'm also a little bit, I don't know, with the latest. I'm not going to do it now. I don't know if anybody's noticed it. You get a little squiggly line with your comments, and it's not showing it here, but it's we'll have to talk to some people at JetBrains for that. I hope nobody's on the session here. So that's the repository. And similarly, as the brewer repository, we just have a find by name at the moment. And you can obviously do whatever you'd like for your application, and you would do a delete by as well. And I don't know if I'm going to be so bold to even try it, but live demos are always interesting. And then there's the service. Let's see. So let's go here. So here's the service. And then what you do here in this case is you define your database type. Okay. In this case, it's a document. All right. And by the way, the enums for all these exist as well. So, for example, I think this is key value, right? I think you have graph, and so on. So, right. So, obviously, keep this as document. And then basically, here's the, you're injecting the beer repository, and in this case, and also too, the provider is optional. If you want to have more than one database, here's where the provider would be a little bit more relevant to use. And while I'm at it, Jakarta NoSQL uses CDI. Config uses config, and we have everything defined right here. Okay, so the MongoDB document configuration, and obviously there'd be others for the various other databases. Standard port is 27017. And so on. So here's where you would define these things. So just while I was thinking about it, I thought I'd pop that up. And yeah, and in the POM file, it's kind of interesting. I need to ask about that. I have all these. I wanted to go into newer versions, but I was having some difficulty, so I have them commented out from now. But I got the weld here for for CDI. And so on, JSON, JSON binding, and all that. So anyway, to be worked on, as down the road. So just keep that in mind as well. All right, so we got the service, and I have a beer service here. We're injecting config property. That's what I showed you in the MicroProfile-config file. DB1. I mean, you can call it whatever, right? You can call it Fred if you'd like. And you have an instance of a template here. And here's where you can, use the template method. There's a template design pattern that's included in here too. I have not done anything with that, but here's where you can do the inserts and things like this, define those. And any queries here. And so here's where a find by name, it has the JNoSQL document query, and basically, it's just very nice with streams. Select from the beer collection, where name equals the name being passed in, and then your terminator is the build method here. And then you would return that. Now this is for a service as opposed to the repository. You'll see what I'm talking about when I get to that point. And let's see. And then I have a very similar one here. So find by brewer ID. Obviously, I have not used these in the application. That's why they're grayed out. But this is how you would define that. And the same thing for brewer. Okay, find by name, that kind of thing. So manager producer. This is behind the scenes stuff by CDI. And you can, and here's where you do some a document collection manager. Okay, here's the name right there, beer doc, for lack of a better variable name. Let's see, that's the property, and you know, let's see. Oh, yeah, that's the getter method, and again the same thing for the brewer. It's not the database, of course. I put DB. That's a misnomer, but and it has a close method right there. So, but again, this is invoked by the container itself. All right. So let's close some of this, some of these things out. And basically, everything happens with beer app. Okay. So you can see what I've been trying to do is to use the Jakarta namespace for some of this stuff here. And I'll have to try it again, but it was not working with that. In this case, the SE container, I believe it's config 2. You can do a container with Java SE. And here's what I'm talking about here. It's not going to do it because it's a live demo. All right, but
Live demos always make things more difficult.
exactly. So it's always fun. All right, so basically, you can do a try with resources here with initializing a container within Java SE. We're going to instantiate a service, all right, or the container itself by using the passing in the service object, and so then here we define the instantiate the repositories, and is at this point where those declared abstract methods are basically implemented, right? And we use the service class to get the beer repository, which then corresponds to right here, get beer repository. So, all right, where's that? Here it is. Bring that over here. Can you guys see the code? I just realized that. Is that? I can make it bigger. Everything good with that? Okay. All right, so we're going to get a beer repository, a brewer repository. We can do the same thing with beer service and brewer service.
Sorry, I was on mute, but you may want to maybe expand it a couple more sizes than that. That would actually make it a bit. There you go. Yes. Yeah, that'll probably be good.
Sorry about that. I should have done that earlier.
Yeah, I should have actually probably also mentioned something earlier. Now that I think about it, sorry about that as well.
Yeah, so my apologies. But this, I have the existing. I have the repo available. It's not on my website just yet, but I can point you to where it is. So before we close out here. So I thought we do both of these. I didn't implement the beer service one, but you notice that it's interesting. You're using the service, right? To get the beer repository, and you're using the container, to select and get the beer service that way. So that's pretty much the standard. And then here's where the builder stuff comes in. That you saw in the Pojo. All right. It's kind of neat. You can do it the more traditional way, but it actually does add code. So I just thought it was kind of a cool thing to show. So, personal preference. And, it has the corresponding methods, that in the Pojo itself. So you use builder.id, and the number. Weyerbacher is one of my favorites out in there. Oh, that's supposed to be Pennsylvania. So let's fix that right now. It's about, I don't know, it's about 40 miles from where I live. But I'll tell you one thing: if I ever went to the brewery, I'd have to Uber it back home. They have some wild stuff. If you guys have ever had one of their stuff. So you use the insert method for. I should change that to. We got copy and paste is evil. So, all right. So that's pretty much how you would, create a new brewer and basically put it into the database itself. And we can, you know, since we are doing the demo now, I can, there it is, there it is. Aha. All right, commented out code 15 lines, and if you expand it, it talks about using, you know, because of GitHub and et cetera, et cetera. So, so I found Torn Label Brewing in Kansas City and Strange Days Brewing. And if I ever get out to Kansas City, I'll have to make sure I look up Billy too. So we'll put these all in the database. We'll run these. And so we can insert using brewer service Wirebacher, and then it's the save method for the repository. And I have all the IDs correct. Okay. All right. Here's a document template. I was, you know, decided to try to do this at the last minute, but I was having some issues, so it's going to stay commented out for now. And all right, so before we run this, we'll go through some of this code and how you can, you know, use the find by methods here. All right, we're going to find, you know, look for Southern Tier. All right, and we'll put it out on this on the screen. All right, and then we'll get the brewer ID. And so in this case, it'll be from here, Southern Tier. All right, and it's number 1. It's the first one. All right. And we won't add a date. We won't add one just yet. So we'll just play with this a little bit. You can find a beer by name. So we'll look for the Southern Tier Warlock Imperial Stout, and then here's the way we can get more than one type of beer from one particular brewer. All right. So we'll run that out. Have everything running, of course. All right. So. All right, fine. I'm not going to sit there and hit the up arrow all night. So, a moment of truth here. Good. At least we don't have that. Oh, there it is. Okay, and we'll just run it that way. Now, it would be nice to have a you know, a REST application, but that's homework for you guys if you're interested in doing that. So. All right, so look at what it put out here.
Always good when the code compiles and runs. That's always like the scary moment in every live demo. And then like that hunt around for like why is it not working or something.
Exactly. So, well, let's look at the now. If we refresh this, we should have different brewers here. We should have 9 or 10. Yeah. So you see now we've added you know, the Wirebacher, the Torn Label, and the Strange Days, and that's it. We didn't add any new beer just yet, but you'll see there we're finding a brewer by name, Southern Tier. It's in Lakewood, New York, and the ID is 1, so we get the ID, right? And we're going to insert one based on that. All right, we'll probably do it for one of the new ones, and then you can find a beer by name. And what I passed in was Warlock Imperial Stout, if you remember. And it doesn't say beer type dot, you know, type. It actually just puts out the stout. And then the brewer ID is 1, which corresponds to that, and the ABV itself. And then, so the other one that was in there was Pumpkin. That's, if you can get that, if they distribute out that far, it's a seasonal, of course. It's, you know, probably start seeing it in September timeframe. That's always a good one. And so that's what we got on that at the moment. So let's continue. Let's see. So let's add a new beer. Okay. Well, I found one called Full Slab. Okay. And ID will be 5, I believe. Let's see. Let's get this right first time. Yep, number 5. ID is 5. It's an IPA, if I remember correctly, 8.6. We can save it. And so let's go and insert it with, and Beer Slab was what that was the, hold on one second. That was the Strange Days, if I remember correctly. So, as a matter of fact, we'll comment these out because we don't want to put, you know, we don't want to put duplicate in there. So strange is number 10. There we go.
So,
Oh,
like I've done mostly like when it comes to NoSQL, like just kind of played around with it. Have you done any of this kind of like in a real app, like a real production app yet for like a NoSQL database or?
Not yet. I mean like REST application type of thing, like web
or just something that that you're using like in a real like use case where like it's really getting hit with like actual users and everything. I was just curious to kind of like,
no.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know if like also, I don't know also like in your reading, sorry, didn't also know if like in your reading on this, like what you kind of heard, like, so like you were showing like how a lot of the concepts relate to relational databases, but then like what are some things you may want to watch out for? Like, let's say you're doing like a loop, like you're matching, like, oh, okay, take this, foreign key, go to this other thing. Like, does that become like a big performance slower for, or is there any kind of things like that you've heard when it comes to, particularly at least MongoDB?
Yeah, I know Mongo is very popular, but for in production, I don't know, who's using what. I thought I heard one time Twitter uses MongoDB, but then at certain points they actually write stuff out to a relational database. That's what I heard. And how true that is, I don't know. But performance-wise, based on that graph we saw earlier, that it's up there with with graph database types as far as complexity and not very scalable. So when we're talking, I guess, as n approaches 1 million records, let's say, or, 1 million, a million rows, I forget what the thing is at the moment, documents, then, what the performance is, I don't know. I've never played with anything that big.
Okay, I got you. We do have a question from Brandon, and he is asking is this targeted, like, so some of what you're showing, is this targeted for Jakarta EE9, or is it for like a future release, or is it no target yet?
Yeah, well, at the moment, the best I can say is it's not targeted just yet. I'd like to see this for Jakarta EE10. It's obviously not going to be 9.1, and I think 10 is supposed to come out in the first quarter of next year. So, I'll have to talk to Otavio about that. And it all, depends on, how many contributors, that are there to help out with that. And that's kind of the inspiration that got me into this as well, because I like MongoDB. I got into it from the very beginning. I still have my MySQL, relational databases as well. And, so I thought this would be something to do something useful as far as contributions, because here's a spec that's, new, it's in development, and there's, I wanted to hopefully build some energy around that and get that going for later release. So 10 might be maybe ambitious, but we'll see how it goes during the summer.
Nice.
So I finally made my first contribution today, and I started with documentation. I started with documentation and the pull request and the whole 9 yards, and I can show you where to get started with that later.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, it's always kind of difficult knowing where to jump in. Usually, yeah, documentation's the easiest. Like, at least you're not worried about accidentally breaking something there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I guess is Otavio, is he the spec lead for this project, or is he just contribute? Okay, nice.
No, he's a spec lead. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, he's a great guy. He's helped me out quite a bit, and to get going with all this. And then of course, life happens, and I don't get to it as much as I'd like. But which is one of the reasons why giving yourself a deadline by giving a presentation on it actually lights the fire a little bit more to get going. So,
nice.
But yeah,
actually, Brandon just asked another question. So, how are all the documents fetched? Is it lazily? Are they cached in memory? And is any of that stuff kind of configurable then?
Yeah, so the documents, it's binary JSON. So I don't think it's straight text. They do, I guess serialize it or however they do it in the background. I'd have to look that up, but it is what they call BJSON in MongoDB. So it's binary. So I guess it's compiled, as it were, somehow in some way. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah. So let's see. So we're gonna get the list of, we get the strange brewers. We get the we'll get the ID of that one, and then we'll insert this full slab into here. Great questions, by the way. Thanks, guys. This is awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I don't know why it doesn't like that one. Huh? That's kind of weird. I didn't see that until now.
Yeah, I'm reusing the same.
I've had it find it.
variable.
Okay. Oh, right there. Yeah. Okay. Let's just call this then.
I guess that could be beers for the list.
Yeah.
Or,
just a variable name. Yeah. So that's fine. Because we're inserting one here, so we'll call it full. That's fine. All right. I don't like warnings. I really don't. It's, All right, so we'll do that, and then we'll actually find that beer by name and make sure we can see it. Full slab. Okay, good. All right, so then we'll go back. And
I think you might want to update the code because it looks like you're self-referencing the list that you just created.
Oh.
So, like when it's find by name, it's passing in the beer list instead of the full. And you may, and like the line below, I think that's, I guess why that's what you, oh yeah. But then like in the find by name, is that, oh wait, no, never mind. Sorry, that messes me up with IntelliJ. I didn't ignore what I said.
No worries.
You're all fine. Yeah, I forgot with IntelliJ that they do that little tooltip where they show the name of the field that you're passing in. Sorry, so that got me.
Gotcha. All right, good. No, it's all good. It's all good. Hey, it's always good to check,
Yeah.
No question. All right. And as a disclaimer, I have not had any beer just yet, but that will change after we're done here. And
nice.
So we'll run that, and let's see. Here we go. Hold your breath, and looks like everything went. And adding a new beer, finding it. Okay, and the brewer ID, full slab. It looks like it. Yeah, we've only had only one, right? And if we refresh our, yeah. So we have the new beer, full slab, and in brewer ID is as 10. So, and that corresponds to here. So, yep. So I don't know. We can. I don't know if we want to delete one or not. I kind of hate messing with the database that way. We can always put it back in, right? So
yeah,
let's be adventurous.
It's fine, right?
No. All right. So well, let's see. Let me do. All right. Just make it real quick deleting. All right. And if you do a list, oh, we have to define it here, right? So let's see. To do it in the repository. And we'll do a delete by ID. What's the return type, though?
It could be like a bool, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, we'll give it a shot. Right? I didn't study
a lot
that
of
one.
my experience with this is with Spring Data. And so like it already has like a bunch of pre-configured like delete, like a lot of the basic CRUD stuff. Yeah. Does it also have like that in Jakarta as well? Or
yes, it does. That a lot of these, have the repository. If you look up the repository, I have that here actually. Here it is. Yeah. So it's a find by and delete by. You can go there. So and always, you can also chain them together. Find by X and Y, or that kind of thing. And here's delete by, and you have order by. No, I didn't see delete by in there.
I think delete. Yeah, delete by was up there just before like the and.
Oh,
like
here.
A line or two. Yep.
Yep. So. It is a Boolean, or no, delete by is a void. Ah, okay.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense also.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, good. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to do that. So this is like, frontier land here. So, yeah. So I delete by ID, and then if this, where's the app? There you are. All right. And then if it's void, then we just have to do vir, delete by ID, and let's get rid of number 5. We can always put it back in, right? One thing that's interesting too, I forgot to mention earlier, and I'll do that while we're commenting things out. In the documentation, I read that it would be very nice if everything for relational and NoSQL, were the same. But there are things in NoSQL databases, and this was something new for me, about things like time in list or something like that, or time in time in the database, those kinds of things. So that was kind of cool to learn. But they try to do this as much to what Java developers are used to using in JPA, for example. So, but
that's
all
good.
right, so we'll delete that one, and then we'll see if that works. So, all right, so now we're really going to be nervous, right? Let's see if it compiles first. That's the first.
Yeah.
All right, good. I like that. All right, so before we run this, let's double check. We're going to get rid of number 5. This is the full slab. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, and then when we run it, oh, look at that. Nice. Now, it's interesting. Finding variety, but I did it at the end, right? So it wouldn't work this time. So if we, look at that. Wow.
Nice.
We passed the test.
That's good.
All right. Good deal. Good deal. So, okay, good. So yeah, I'm going to keep working on this, for, have some more fun with it. I want to get into that template part, things like that.
Yeah.
But, if you want to, basically, if you want to clone the repository, which, let's see, have this one. So this is.
Send it,
I can put it.
It's like the URL and stuff, and we can put it in the description for this video, so that way people in the future can also pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have the repository. So this is the one that is forked from Eclipse EE4J and NoSQL, and then if I go to, here it is. But it might be a little out of sync at the moment. But you have everything here. I got to put a README in and all that. So but yeah, it's everything is here that you saw in IntelliJ. So
nice. Yeah. Getting a good README and all that stuff, that's definitely a skill I've taken some time to learn.
So Barry Bird, who you may know, and we collaborated on about 9 or 10 technical articles back like 2006 to 2008 for a periodical that was once known as Java Boutique. And we did it all on design patterns. And so basically, I still have all the code, and I started putting them up on my GitHub repository. But I wanted a consistent README file, for that, to say, hey, here's how you get started, et cetera, that kind of thing. So it's always useful. And you're right. I think it's an art to having a good README file and to ensure everything works, so that you can, clone the repo, MVN, clean compile, and then run. So whether it's through Docker or whatever, right? So, but yeah, so that's the thing here, right? Let's see. So, if there's no questions, I'll finish up with the last few slides.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I don't see any right now.
Okay. Maybe I put everybody to sleep too. I don't know. If not. All right. Yeah. So I mentioned this at the very beginning that this is in development. It's if you look at the documentation, it's 1.0.0. Like B for beta, I guess 3. And I know the intent is to migrate to JDK 11 after Jakarta EE 9.1 is released, and that will be like next week. So this might be a perfect time, for Otavio and I to get together again and figure out how are we going to do that. So, so it's everybody looks for contributions in these various things. So of course the other Jakarta EE specs as well. Depending on what you're interested in. If you're not interested in NoSQL, you got CDI, you got bean validation, you name it, right? There's an effort to create a Jakarta config. I don't know. I guess it's out there in the public space. So that's in the works. So look for that at some point.
Okay. Thanks.
So if you're on the mailing list for Jakarta EE, I think it's pretty much public knowledge right now. So I'm not giving away a secret. But yeah. So and then here's some resources here, and like I said, I can shoot you an email. This YouTube video is with Otavio and someone else doing a demo at a conference or a Java group. One of the editors at InfoQ put out a pretty good introductory, Jakarta NoSQL that was from roughly 2 years ago, October 2019. This is the URL for the specifications on the very top for the spec itself, and there's so many others. I don't know. I'm sure people are familiar with Bale Dung. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I believe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a lot of blog posts with various things. He's pretty good. Yeah,
very useful ciphers, sir, and they're very succinct. It's not like a whole lot of ceremony before and after. It's like here's like the exact steps you need to do what you need to do, which is always very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. But
and also to the note with Octavio, he will actually be joining us here July as well to talk about architecting cloud computing with Java. So
cool.
So a little bit of a review of a lot of the work he's been doing, and hopefully he can share some stuff as well. Hopefully, I don't know, like we did talk with him earlier. Hopefully he'll still up because he's in Portugal now, so that's gonna be pretty late for him to be presenting.
Oh, no, it'll be an extra hour since you guys are in Central, right? So
exactly. Yeah, it'll be the same as 6:30 for you. Yeah. So that's a late hour.
Have you guys done any noontime presentations, especially now during COVID and all the online stuff?
We haven't. I occasionally have thought about that, but we're just kind of staying with like what our slot was when we did it for live. So I thought about that because that could be kind of good as well to kind of do it during like the work day, but just other stuff keeps coming up and I just never can get around to like trying to test out that switch.
Yeah, the New York Java group did it sometime last year, probably June, July. They had Graham Rocher. I guess he was still with OCI at the time. Of course, talking about Micronaut, and which is the shirt I'm wearing here, by the way.
Yeah.
So we thought about it too, and so far we haven't, executed that yet. But who knows? We'll see. Might be something to try and see how many people come out. And by the way, I'm thinking I'm going to put a plug in for our next meeting, and the reason I do so is because we have Lucy Greco. She's blind,
nice.
so handicapped, and so I think this is a must-see, for any developer. And I have some personal experience. My wife has an eye disease, and I was doing the website for the old computer club to which I once belonged, and I was using the default color scheme from Bootstrap, and she looked at it and she says, "No." She goes, "That combination of colors is not good." For somebody who, and in her case, I mean, she can still see, but she's not totally blind. But I'm sure there's other things that we can learn to help in accessibility. So I think this might be a great talk next month. It's on June 8th, and it's on the website. But
yeah, absolutely. And I'll post it in here. So yeah, I know Lucy as well. And she did a great video about a new washing machine that she recently purchased. And
I saw that.
it's very difficult for her to use as a blind person because, and it's because of simple things like, so she's trying to use a knob, just to, obviously, but like from the people watching, like she's trying to use a knob, and because there's no clicking or anything, like no resistance clicking, anything like that, it's extremely hard for her to know what is in there. Or what setting it's on, and it's like what's called like an infinite knob, to where you can just keep having it turn round and round and round, forever. So it's not like it gets like to one side and gets to the other side to where you can kind of count the clicks or something. So it's just really interesting just how the different experience that she has because of her seeing blindness, that you just don't think about maybe as a sighted person. And it's a good thing to know also, like, or whether it's also if you can't hear or certain things like that to consider when designing applications, or even in this case hardware, to get that extra perspective.
No, right, exactly. And we take these things for granted. So yeah, I think it's have you guys hosted her yet, or
not yet? It's probably someone we really should get onto our schedule.
So, but yeah, definitely. I think she obviously is highly recommended and well known for that. So, but yeah, I just thought I'd mention that only because I think this is an important topic. So
nice.
But this is just a couple of resources I threw up there. I mean, if you do search, there's links from the spec and all that, which I can show as well. And then if you want to get involved, obviously, please contribute. And there's the URL for that, that GitHub. So you fork that, and then clone it to your own machine and do your usual GitHub stuff there. And then, so obviously I want to acknowledge Ottavio. Big help to me over these past few months.
Awesome.
And just contacting me is my basically in order. It's my email address, my Twitter handle. If you don't mind some of the political stuff, that's where I
sometimes you have to bear with me also on that when on Twitter for people who follow me.
So yes, I think I've seen some of your stuff, and you were pretty harsh on Josh Hawley, which he deserves, but that's a whole nother story. So wait, so are you in Missouri or Kansas part?
I'm in the Missouri part.
You're in Missouri. Okay, that's right. So, that's my personal website. I have a portfolio, which I kind of came up with when I saw Ray Sang's list of talks. I'm like, you know what? I should do that. So, because it's really, because I used to have the title slide would have the day, would have the venue. I'm like, well, if you're going to do this over and over again, there's no need for that. So let's have a generic, let's have some of these talks. And so I'll have the link to the slides and the GitHub repository up there. They're not there now.
Okay. And I'll be sure to post like some of these links as well into the description as well, so people can easily get to it. So okay,
cool. Yeah. If you have any questions or if you think of them later on, please just shoot me an email. I always try to get back to people as soon as possible, and it's just want to help out in that regard. So
awesome. All right.
And speaking of beer, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad. I'm glad I had a chance to present to you guys.
Absolutely. No, this was great. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. So I think, we don't have any more questions. So I think with that, we'll go ahead and sign off, and everyone can go out, get a beer or get dinner going. So, all right. See everyone later.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks a lot. Okay. Bye.
Bye. And